he claimed that he could detect past lives. And at the end of his life, basically when he's on his deathbed, I don't know if you know this story, he, in 1925, the last series of talks that he gave were called Karmic Relationships. Have you seen those?
No.
They were published in 7 volumes. And basically, they were dictated from his deathbed. They weren't told publicly to his friend Ida Wegman, who was the founder of anthroposophical medicine.
Mm.
She was his soulmate. And they give their accounts where Rudolf Steiner says, I'm going to look at historical people, like Goethe and Karl Marx. And I think he indicated maybe 30 or 40 cases. And he said, I'm going to tell you who they were in their previous
Ah,
lives.
okay. Okay.
Called
Now
karmic
it's ringing
relationships.
a bell. Mhm.
When I left the United States, my Steiner library had probably 150 books in it. And I left them all with a friend, except for the karmic relationships and a couple of others.
Mm.
Goethe, the scientist, and the redemption of thinking. And I kept those three, and I gave all the other books because it's cultic material. It's
Mm.
brainwashing,
Mm.
basically. Yeah. And so, what the point I want to make is that he claimed he talked about the Parzival legend, and he claimed that he had been a figure in Wolfram von Eschenbach's Parzival. He had lived at that time. He claimed that he was the slain knight called Schoentalundr. This is in Parzival. And
Yeah.
he claimed that Sigune, who was a nun and a figure in the story, was Ida Wegman. And he wrote a book which was privately published, and anthroposophists have like kept this to themselves, but I had a copy of it, which recounted that he and Ida Wegman, who was his soulmate, how they had reincarnated through 5 or 6 different
Mhm.
times. So I got deeply involved in that, and I was exploring reincarnation. And when I did astrology, I made it my specialty. I said, I will investigate reincarnation. But I had a caveat that I told them. I said, look, I will come up with reincarnation scenarios for you from a tool that I use, which is called the prenatal chart. It's not the birth chart, it's the prenatal chart. And I said, but I want to tell you that they're just imaginary stories. I'm not literally saying you were this person. I'm just saying this is the kind of person that you were. You might compare it to somebody in the past, right? It's very careful about that. But anyway, to cut to the chase, getting back to the Grail family, when you're in the Grail family, which I call the ground force now, uh, you can't, it's a proxy. It's not literal reincarnation. There's no literal reincarnation of Amfortas, the Grail King. There is no literal reincarnation of Gawain
Mhm.
or Parzival, but there are proxies. You can be the proxy. And the proxy means that when you come into the Grail family and you read that story, which is an unparalleled story of all great medieval stories, yeah, you can identify, you can find a role in there,
Mhm.
you see. So there are Parzival proxies, and not just one of them. But if you're going to claim to be a Parzival proxy, like I do, you got to prove it.
Mhm.
So it really gives you this beautiful biographical substance where you can work your own identity imaginatively,
Mhm.
but it's all within the framework of the narrative because the narrative of the Legend of the Grail is about the organic light, and the organic light is the telluric radiance of the earth.
Mhm.
Full
Which you can interact with.
full stop, with which you can interact with. Full
Mm.
stop. Do not look anywhere else.
Mm. This idea of a proxy, uh, so this is in my imagination, it'd be something that you almost sentimentally feel you're connected to,
Yes.
and then you prove it,
Mhm.
basically. which makes perfect sense. Would you say that this idea of literal reincarnation from one individual to the next is not how reincarnation works?
Yes,
Or
I would say that it's wrong.
Mhm.
I can tell you in a soundbite, you know, individual people like you and I, or individual people in the past like Socrates or Marcus Aurelius or Hypatia, do not reincarnate. Their memories do.
Mhm. Mhm.
So you can remember the life
Mhm.
of someone in the past because you inherit their memories. They persist in the phylogenetic memory
Mhm.
register, but
So
they that doesn't mean that you actually live physically at that person. It's not literal.
yeah,
So
so it's
people do not reincarnate.
as if.
Yeah, it's as if people do not reincarnate, but memories do.
Mhm. Mhm.
And you can
Yeah.
prove that, and you can prove that as well. And I have proven that, in some instances.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
there's
I mean
also a
that's
way.
fascinating, and that makes more sense in the sober light of day, like when you're actually detaching from a kind of imaginative fantasy that one might have about, oh, I'm the incarnation of,
Cleopatra.
yeah, but that is more of an imaginative fantasy. Whereas if the true imagination is the more sober imagination, which is no, those memories live within me, or I
Yeah,
have
they
an
live
access.
within the body of the earth. They live
Yeah,
within the body of the earth. I
and
had a
therefore,
client once, and she came to me and she said, "Well, I understand your specialty is tracking reincarnations, with astrology, which it was." And she said, "Well, I know that I'm the reincarnation of Cleopatra, right?" And I said, "Okay, fine. Just want to warn you that I don't consider a reincarnation to be literal necessarily, but I'll go investigate, the evidence." And so she was kind of a new age spiritual teacher in Santa Fe. Uh, and so I said, okay, well, I'm looking at this evidence, which is in the prenatal chart, uh, about 9 months before you're born. And I said, well, I see a figure here. Of course, I was totally inventing this. And I told her that I was inventing it in the beginning, like I said, I'm just going to invent a story that, could have been you. And it looks to me like you might have been the gay uncle of Cleopatra who liked to dress up like her.
yeah, I'm sure that went down really well
It
then.
went down beautifully. So, the trouble with reincarnation is it's great, romantic, it's grandiosity, It's like, I don't claim to be the reincarnation of Socrates, but I may as fucking well be. You know what I mean? You get the difference,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah.
The trouble with reincarnation is that once you fixate on that idea, oh, I lived before and I was some famous person, then you bring on all the baggage of the ideology of reincarnation,
Mm.
which is complete bullshit. What, who's keeping the record that says you did good things in this life and you're going to benefit later in this life? Or
Mm.
you think you did bad things here and that's why it's nonsense.
Mhm.
It's a control system told by old men in order to get people to behave. That's all it is.
So this idea of the Akashic records.
Yeah, there is an Akashic record, but it's the phylogenetic memory circuits of the earth. It's a
Mhm.
membrane of the composition of the biosphere.
Mm.
And you can actually go there in shamanic trance. And I've
Mhm.
been to these memory circuits and accessed them a lot. And that's not new either, because the record of history shows that the bards and the mystics of the races like the Celts, the Germans, uh, that they were that they possessed the paranormal ability to access the memory of the tribe. So if you
Hmm.
were like Taliesin, the great Celtic bard, Taliesin, if you were the bard of
Mm.
the Celtic people, you could mystically go and access the memory of the people. And that's why you told the people their story, because they need their
Mhm.
story in order to have their identity.
Mhm.
So it's not just some fluke that I came up with, but it comes out
And I
of,
suppose
yeah, go
a
ahead.
substructure of that. Um, I don't know, how did you phrase it? This what the Akashic records, the collective memory. Is the blood like a substructure, or the some sort of localized aspect of it? So this druid embodies the collective memory of his people. Um,
Very good question. And I don't have an answer to that. I can tell you that I've looked at that, and it's a deep, deep question. And I can just give you my first impressions because I have accessed these phylogenetic memory circuits. I've had that experience many times. It's a very strange, bizarre experience. You have to be really sober to handle it because actually you find yourself in two places at once.
mm,
It's kind of like a bilocation experience.
mm,
But my impression is that the blood, the iron in the blood, probably uh, connects to the iron in the earth. We know that that's true,
mm,
the magnetic, electromagnetic field of the earth. And somehow it's in the bioelectromagnetical field of the earth, which we're immersed in, that those memory circuits are part of that. But I don't have a description of exactly how they are. But it's certainly related to blood knowledge. It's a blood knowledge.
right. I mean, what would come to mind is the mycelium networks of certain regions. So they, in Oregon, there's an enormous mycelium network. Um, And so the trees are connected through through the mycelium network underground. But it's localized to that region. That I don't know if people have been able to prove that one mycelium network in one area of the world is going to be able to communicate with another one. Um,
It's very bioregional. I can tell you, for instance, when I was exploring Scotland and Ireland and the British Isles and Wales, if I would go, and I wasn't even taking mushrooms, I was just going there and tuning in.
mm,
When I would go and sit at a stone circle in the mountains of Wales, or I would sit at another one in Ireland,
mm,
the Hill of the Witches, which is near Dublin, or I would go to Callanish in the on the Hebrides Islands and access. What you access is local. They're local holding stations for memory. That's what they were always intended to be, you see?
mm,
So you tune in to the memory of the land and of the place because the people are a product of the place, see? So it is bioregional. When you go and access these memory circuits, depends on where you are.
mm. Yeah, where you are, and I suppose who you are to a certain extent. Like you
Yeah,
going to you going to Ireland is
yeah,
going to be an easier connection than you going to Botswana, for example.
absolutely, absolutely. You when you go to the places where your blood ancestry comes from, you get a more powerful access, a clearer access. Yeah.